At 0958 hours, the Caribbean sky looked calm, that deceptive kind of calm before steel and fire rewrite the weather. From 2,000 feet above the water, a U.S. Marine Corps AH-1Z Viper tore through the humid air at 150 knots. To most eyes, it was just another helicopter. To anyone with a radar, it was a flying problem set that only ended in explosions. The target: a Venezuelan fast boat loaded with enough contraband to fund a small rebellion. The smugglers didn't know it yet, but in 12 minutes, their boat would be scattered across the sea like confetti at the wrong parade. 15 minutes earlier, the Viper had lifted off from the USS Weema, its rotors biting into the morning haze. On the pilot's helmet display, a small dot blinked red, the target. 18 nautical miles away, closure rate 195 knots. The math was already against the cartel. Up ahead, the ocean shimmered like polished glass. Beneath that serenity, something violent was inbound. The AH-1Z Viper isn't just a helicopter. It's the Marine Corps' idea of subtlety. A compact apocalypse with wings, twin engines, composite armor, and 8 Hellfire missiles waiting to deliver a masterclass in consequences. The pilot, callsign Viper 2-1, had been flying for 9 years. He hadn't missed a target since flight school. His co-pilot, a weapons officer named Mason, handled the targeting systems like a man defusing God's own grenade. Above them, cruising at 20,000 feet, a P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft scanned the sea with its AN divided by APY-10 radar. The Poseidon, essentially a Boeing 737 that traded passenger seats for $400 million worth of sensors and torpedoes, had picked up a smuggler's signature hours ago. Twin outboard engines, 45 knots. Heading north from Venezuela along what the Navy jokingly called the Caribbean Express, the freeway for bad decisions. The Poseidon dropped a string of sonobuoys, their hydrophones listening for the rumble of twin Mercury 300 horsepower engines. Slightly out of sync, maintenance apparently wasn't the cartel's strong suit. Each acoustic ping painted a clearer picture. The cartel was making a run for open waters, but the Americans were already writing their ending. Inside the Viper, Mason adjusted his TSS, target sight system, a helmet-mounted array that projected data directly onto his visor. It was Iron Man's HUD, but with fewer jokes and more consequences. The FLIR camera tracked the heat plume of the boat, 2 white-hot dots against a cool ocean background. At that moment, democracy was approaching from the north at 150 knots, and it had a bad attitude. "Target lock confirmed," Mason said calmly. "Copy," the pilot replied. "Let's make this quick. I've got lunch in 30. 8 AGM-114R. Hellfire missiles hung under the stub wings, the Romeo variant, the all-purpose eraser of problems. Each one weighed 108 pounds, cost about $150,000, and could erase a bad decision faster than a lawyer on speed dial. The pilot set the laser PRF code to 1113, a unique signature ensuring the missile followed only their beam. No friendly fire, no confusion, just pure precision. "Hellfire 1 armed." "Lobel," Mason called. "Lock on before launch." "Copy that," the pilot said. "Let's paint the target." The Viper's nose-mounted laser fired an invisible beam, 1.064 microns of light, no human could see. But to the missile seeker head, it was a neon highway sign reading, "Hit here." Down below, the boat began evasive maneuvers, 45-degree turns every 30 seconds. It was like watching a drunk driver try to escape a GPS. The TSS autotrack stayed glued to it, predictive algorithms anticipating each swerve with machine-level smugness. Through the data link, the Poseidon updated live telemetry. Viper 2-1, target speed 45 knots, distance to Venezuelan waters 14 minutes, your ETA 3 minutes. You're cleared hot on confirmation. "Copy, Poseidon," the pilot said. "Cleared hot pending laser lock." The Viper leveled off at 2,000 feet. Rotor wash rippled across the sea below. Mason's visor glowed with data. Distance 5.5 kilometers. Wind negligible. Humidity high. The Hellfire seeker cooled to negative 200 degrees Celsius with compressed argon, a tiny frost-covered eye preparing to find a sparkle of reflected death. Inside the missile, gyroscope spun at 40,000 revolutions per minute, stabilizing like a demon's compass. "Viper 2-1. Weapons free," came the transmission. "Copy that," said the pilot, engaging. At 1009 hours, he squeezed the trigger. The Hellfire dropped away from the rail with a burst of flame, its solid rocket motor igniting like bottled thunder. In 2.5 seconds, it went from 0 to Mach 1.3, pulling 20 Gs. The missile climbed gracefully, the perfect predator following an invisible leash of light. Inside, its autopilot recalculated every 20 milliseconds, tracking, adjusting, correcting, relentless as mathematics itself. From the cockpit, the crew watched through infrared feed as the missile arced up and dove. The Viper's sensors caught every frame, the missile slicing through air, vapor trails spiraling behind it like calligraphy. Impact in 5. Mason counted softly. 4, 3, 2. The feed flared white. The missile hit dead center, right at the waterline. A blinding flash. Pressure wave. The entire boat vanished into an expanding bloom of vapor, fire, and shattered fiberglass. The warhead, 20 pounds of high-explosive multi-purpose Fury, detonated with the force of 28 pounds of TNT. The overpressure alone hit 200 pounds per square inches, enough to liquefy steel, let alone a speedboat. For half a second, the infrared sensors maxed out, everything pure white, too hot for the camera to process. Then came the debris, a circle of wreckage nearly 100 meters wide spread across the sea. Engine parts, seat cushions, one broken oar, all that remained of what had been a $1 million smuggling operation. The radar signature disappeared instantly. The ocean reclaimed its calm. "Good effect on target," Mason said. "Roger that," the pilot replied, voice steady. "Target neutralized. Returning to base." They circled once. Nothing larger than a cooler lid remained floating. The whole engagement from trigger pull to total annihilation took 8.3 seconds. Less time than it takes to order coffee at Starbucks. Above them, the Poseidon confirmed. "Target destroyed. Mission complete. Nice shot, Viper 2-1. "Appreciate it," the pilot replied. "Put that one in the record books." They banked north, rotors cutting through the smoke trail that still lingered on the sea's surface. The horizon glowed faintly orange, the last trace of fire fading into the morning haze. In Washington, the report would read, "Engagement successful, vessel destroyed, 0 collateral damage." But out here, it felt less like paperwork and more like punctuation, a statement written in fire. The kind of message that needs no translation. For the smugglers, it was bad luck. For the Marines, it was Tuesday. But behind the humor and the bravado, the mission carried weight. Every launch meant more than steel and fuel. It was the projection of willpower, the invisible reach of a nation's hand into lawless waters. Every missile that flew wasn't just destruction, it was deterrence, the sound of order in a world too used to chaos. Mason leaned back, exhaling. "That's one less shipment headed north." "Yeah," the pilot said quietly. "And one more reason they'll think twice before running that route again." The cockpit hummed with the low vibration of twin rotors. Instruments flickered green. The Viper's fuselage gleamed under the rising sun, a silhouette of precision against the endless blue. Below, the sea erased all traces of what had happened, the wreck sinking slowly, piece by piece, into the deep. On the deck of the USS Weema, sailors watched the Viper approach, the faint shimmer of heat haze trailing behind it like ghost exhaust. The helicopter touched down with surgical grace. Engines spooled down, rotors slowing to a heavy rhythmic thump, the smell of jet fuel mixed with salt air. "Welcome back, 2-1, ground crew called. "Target's gone," the pilot replied. "Completely gone." The crew chief nodded. "That's how we like it." Hours later, the footage from the TSS would circulate through training rooms, intelligence briefings, and PowerPoint slides titled "Precision Engagement Caribbean Sector." Analysts would pause the thermal video, watching frame by frame as the Hellfire descended, hit, and erased. It was clinical, beautiful, in a terrible way. Proof that technology, when married to intent, becomes poetry in motion, the kind that rhymes with shock and awe. The mission's aftermath rippled quietly across the region. Smuggler chatter on encrypted radios turned panicked. Word spread fast, a ghost strike in the Caribbean. A boat gone in 8 seconds, hit by something they never saw coming. The message was clear. The sea was no longer theirs. For the Marines, it was a reminder that modern warfare isn't always about armies and nations. Sometimes it's one pilot, one missile, and one decision made in a cockpit hovering above the edge of the world. And sometimes, justice doesn't come in courtrooms, it comes at Mach 1.3. By sunset, the Viper sat silent on the deck, its panels cooling under amber light. Somewhere below, maintenance crews checked the missile racks, refueled the tanks, and logged the sortie. The ocean stretched calm again, as if nothing had happened, but beneath that calm, the reef had a new addition, a shattered reminder of what happens when ambition outruns judgment. The report closed with a single line that summed it all up better than any speech ever could. Target eliminated. No survivors. Mission accomplished. But the unofficial footnote whispered among pilots and sailors later that night was far simpler. Don't mess with a Viper. It doesn't miss. And as the stars blinked awake over the Caribbean, the USS Weema cut through the dark like a quiet promise that somewhere out there, beyond the waves, the next mission was already waiting. As the Viper flew north, the ocean stretched endlessly calm, shimmering, innocent. But every calm sea hides stories of storms, and this morning, the storm had rotors. Through the cockpit glass, the pilot could see the faint curvature of the earth, the horizon drawn like a line between order and chaos. The radio crackled with static, then a voice calm, clinical, unshakably American. Viper 2-1, Poseidon actual. Confirm visual on splash zone. Affirmative, Mason replied. Targets gone. 0 debris, 0 heat signature. Splash complete. Copy that, Viper. Proceed to grid Alpha 3. Surveillance drones will sweep for confirmation. Outstanding work. The transmission ended. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that pressed against your ears, full of invisible echoes. The pilot glanced at the ocean again. You ever think about it? He said quietly. Mason turned. About what? About how fast it happens. One button press, and $1 million operation becomes a memory. Mason smirked. Yeah, we're the cleanup crew history never sees. The helicopter banked slightly. Sunlight flared across the canopy, scattering rainbow reflections through Mason's visor. The Caribbean shimmered below, blue, gold, unbothered. The remains of the cartel boat were already sinking, gravity pulling greed back where it belonged. But beneath the beauty, the stakes were bigger than one explosion. That route, the Caribbean Express, had fed billions of dollars into global black markets. Weapons, drugs, people, power. Every shipment destroyed wasn't just a number. It was a wound in a network that thought itself untouchable. On the USS Weema's operations deck, Commander Sarah Ellison watched the feed in silence. The live video from the Viper's targeting pod replayed the strike. Launch, arc, impact, bloom. She didn't smile. She just nodded. Confirm kill, log it. Inform Southcom the route is closed. The technician beside her typed quickly. Ma'am, the P-8 reports secondary heat sources, small explosions in the debris field. Ellison leaned in. Fuel or ammo? Likely fuel, but there's chatter on local Venezuelan frequencies. Something about missing assets. They'll know soon enough. Let them, Ellison said coldly. They just learned what jurisdiction really means. Back in the Viper, Mason scrolled through data logs. You see that temperature spike before impact? Yeah, the pilot said. 5,000 degrees in the chamber, 900 on the skin. Hellfire held together like a champ. They always do, Mason replied. You ever wonder how much engineering goes into a single second of destruction? Enough to make God jealous. The Viper's rotors thumped rhythmically. Below them, flying fish scattered like silver shrapnel. The Caribbean wind pressed against the fuselage, singing a low metallic song through the vents. Every sound, every vibration felt alive. Minutes later, they spotted a white object bobbing in the distance debris. Mason zoomed in with the FLIR. It was the cartel's outboard motor, still burning faintly. He marked the coordinates for recovery drones. Target remnants logged, Mason said. Roger that. Heading home. And as they turned toward the USS Weema, clouds began to gather, slow, towering formations, glowing amber under the late morning Sunday. The world looked peaceful again. But peace, they both knew, was always temporary. Inside the pilot's helmet, data streams faded from red to green. The mission timer stopped. The system chimed softly. Mission successful. For most people, that would be the end. For him, it was just another line in a career written in coordinates. Weema Tower. This is Viper 2-1, inbound from target area. Requesting landing vector. Viper 2-1, Weema Tower. Vector 145, winds at 12 knots. You're cleared for deck approach. Copy, Wima Tower. See you in 5. The ship came into view, a gray leviathan rising from the blue, its deck alive with motion. Crew members in color-coded vests moved like clockwork. The Viper descended slowly, landing skids kissing steel. Engines whined down. The world went quiet again. The pilot removed his helmet. His hair was matted with sweat, eyes tired but steady. Mason unstrapped, stretching his arms. "Hell of a morning," he said. "Hell of a world," the pilot answered. On the horizon, the clouds thickened. A faint rumble rolled across the sea, distant thunder, or maybe something else. The Caribbean never stayed silent for long. Somewhere out there, another boat was loading, another radar was watching. The war against chaos had no finish line, only pauses. In the command room, Commander Ellison recorded her closing note. Engagement executed with precision. Target eliminated. No collateral damage. Recommend increased surveillance for possible retaliatory routes. She paused before hitting send. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added a single line. The Viper remains the most effective deterrent in the region. Hours later, as night fell, the USS Wima's decklights shimmered like stars. The Viper sat silent, a dark silhouette against the ocean's endless black. Inside the hangar, mechanics ran diagnostics, cleaning salt residue from the missile racks. The smell of oil and ozone hung heavy in the air. Mason stood by the rail, watching the waves. "You think they'll ever stop trying?" he asked. The pilot joined him. "Not while there's money, or pride, or desperation, but we'll be here." He looked out at the horizon, where the last traces of the explosion had long since faded. "That's the job," he said softly. "We show up, they disappear." Far below, the ocean whispered its secrets. The wreckage of the cartel boat had already begun to settle on the seabed, twisted metal, fragments of fiberglass, shattered ambition. Schools of fish drifted through the debris, indifferent. The sea didn't care who won or lost. It only remembered silence. But satellites did, and data feeds did. And somewhere, in a secure Pentagon server, a high-definition thermal recording of that exact moment would live forever, a testament to precision, power, and the terrifying efficiency of modern warfare. The report would be archived, analyzed, and someday shown to new pilots who'd learned the lesson written between the lines. Technology can make you deadly. Discipline makes you human. The next morning, long before dawn, the Viper's engines roared back to life. Another call had come in, another contact on another stretch of blue. Somewhere out there, another boat was moving fast and thinking it could outrun its fate. And once again, democracy was taking flight.